Daniel is a previous lead campus recruiter at PepsiCo and now is an author, podcast host, speaker, and career coach at Mastering College to Career. Welcome to Non-Traditional College Success, Daniel.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to talk to you more about this and share this conversation with your audience.
Hi, everyone. I'm Arnold Morales, and this is Non-Traditional, a podcast about succeeding in college and overcoming obstacles that non-traditional students face. Together, we will interview recruiters, scholarship committees, and successful graduates. I will also share personal stories, tips, and how-tos just for you. So stay tuned. Yeah, definitely. And I was talking to Danielle before I hit the record button, and I was telling him like Danielle has done everything that I wish I want to do in the future. I wrote a book, he does this course, he does all this speaking. I love it, man. You're just killing it.
I don't know, man. It looks like that from the other side, but I'll tell you, it's always a journey. Like anything else, there's ups and downs to it, right? There's lessons to be learned, and so I don't want you just to think of like, oh, he just has it all figured out. Trust me, I don't have
Oh
it all
no.
figured out. It's a learning process. There's ups and downs. I wrote a book, but I still can't spell as an example, right? So there's like
Yeah.
lessons to be learned.
Hey man, that's what Grammarly's for.
Man, my grammar and spelling are so bad, even Grammarly can't help me sometimes.
Yeah, I totally understand. I guess being from growing up in Honduras, Central America, and Spanish, the main language, that's always been a hurdle for me at work and everything, just grammar and specific things. That's why I speak more than I write.
That's exactly why I did a podcast and not a blog.
That's actually exactly why I did a podcast too. That's funny. All right. So why do you focus on first generation and minorities?
Well, there's many reasons to it, but the main reason started out to because I am a first generation minority, low income student, right? And when I moved to this country with my mom, I was 8 years old. My mom, like many immigrants, was working less than minimum wage jobs. She worked 7 days a week for 15 years in a row without taking any days off of any vacation. And to me, I wanted to be successful. So I went to college. And when I went to college, I realized that, I didn't have the same mentorship or guidance that people that I met whose parents already went to college or who can guide them through, hey, this is when you should start looking for internships, or hey, this is when you should start applying for jobs, or hey, you should get involved in fraternities or sororities or student organizations. And I saw that. And so luckily for me, or luckily, or call it whatever you want, I've always been really good at networking, maybe because I had to overcome my lack of book smarts in a sense. Like going to school is not something very natural to me. I have to study longer. And that then led to me building relationships, which led to jobs. But then I realizing that a lot of my friends that I went to high school with, they were also graduating around the same time, were being underemployed, right? And because they were being underemployed, they were getting jobs that didn't even require their degree, or they were getting paid a lot less. And so I didn't see there was like a lot of resources for those first generation minority students. And so I wanted to focus on them because I felt like there wasn't resources there and I can relate to them from being one of them.
That's awesome, man. And I can totally relate to that as well. First generation, low income, also Hispanic. And it's so true what you say, because I remember starting engineering school, and the first day the advisor's like, you should do mechanical engineering. You say you like math and science, and you love cars, and you're interested in mechanics. You should be a mechanical engineer. And I was like, let's do it. Sign me up. That night I went home and I spent the night at YouTube and Google, what is a mechanical engineer? I didn't even know what it was, man.
Right.
Yeah, and then internships and all that. I had no idea what any of that stuff was. And it's like what you said, the networking aspect. I was really good at networking, so I just got out there, asked questions, got help, and that's the only reason why I think I succeeded in college as well. So definitely that there's that aspect of networking, not being shy to talk. What are some of the biggest obstacles you think first generation and pretty much non-traditional students face?
Yeah. So this is coming from not only my personal experience, but from like mentoring hundreds, if not thousands, of first generation minority college students get their jobs. I think one big thing is just lack of timing on when to do things, right? So the universities have great career fairs or have the student organizations and have tons of resources that are not free but are free as a student because you pay for them as a tuition. And so one thing, big obstacle is not understanding the right timing to do things like thinking of assumptions like, hey, I need to be a senior to have an internship, right? Like that's false. That there's literally internships for freshmen and sophomores and juniors, right? So I think the biggest obstacle is just lack of resources and knowledge, right? The second thing I see is obstacle is lack of network. They don't have their uncle, their dad, their mom that works at a top company that they can get them the door to their internship, which then at one internship gets them to the second internship and so on. And so those relationships with companies that can look really good on their resume and open the doors to other opportunities are crucial. And that's a big obstacle. And so I think you need to start building those relationships as early as possible in your college career.
You hit right on, man, because like timeline, that's so important, especially for like the recruiting aspect for internships. Yesterday night I was doing a coaching session with a student, and he's like, oh, I'm looking for an internship, and I'm like, you already know you're late, right? He's like, well, I looked last month and I couldn't find anything. Like last month was still late. So just not knowing that aspect is so important, even for like scholarship deadlines, for everything, like when to fill out FAFSA. These are all things that students don't know and that they need to learn. And colleges don't do, especially big universities, don't do a great job at it because their people already know these things. They have family members and they have people and they try, but they're still not as good as making sure you find a mentor like Daniel, you find mentors like me, people that are doing out this and putting out content to help. So I definitely I love that one. And then networking. I think that one is so crucial for finding a job nowadays, that you don't even have to apply online. It's all about networking. I waste my time applying online. Now I only do referrals and networking. That's the best way, in my opinion. What are some ways students can overcome these, Daniel?
Yeah, so I think networking is so important, and think about networking not as just, hey, I'm going to go reach out to the recruiter and just try to get a job, but I think it's all about relationship building. And I literally just finished recording a conversation with my mentor for my podcast, right? And it was interesting because we were talking about how we have never met somebody that's extremely successful who wasn't willing to help someone be successful, like to like, because no one ever does it alone. Like there isn't anybody, like if you even think about Tom Brady, right? If you follow him, whether you like him or dislike him, or you love him or you hate him, right? But if you follow Tom Brady, you know that there's a guy, his right hand person, I think his name is Alex or something like that. That it's his trainer, right? Like they follows him when he went from New England to Tampa. Alex moved with him, right? Everybody has a coach. Everybody, no one does it alone. It takes a team to do that. And so my advice is surround yourself with mentors and advisors that can help you. And remember, it's not about just how they can help you, but there's no such thing as a long lasting relationship if it's not mutual beneficial. So think about how can you help them? How can you add value to their life?
Yeah, I love that. And you said something really important where it's no one does it alone. And I get a lot of questions on like why do you help students? Especially because I do a lot of like of it as a nonprofit. And then people are like, why are you helping students? And it's like, why are you spending so much time on this? And it's honestly because if it wasn't for all the people that helped me, I would have never made it as far as I have. So it's my turn to give back and help others.
Yeah.
All right. So you have a 5-step plan with mastering college to career. What is that 5-step plan?
Man, I'm so glad you brought that up because I think after, again, remember I was telling you a lot of trials and tribulation, right? Trying to figure this out. I've really identified that there's 4 steps that are so crucial for any job seeker to go through to be successful in their career. I added a 5th one because I'm a big believer in creating financial independence and creating generational wealth so that the next generation are better off than you were, right? And so those steps have to be followed in order for you to find success. So the first one is clarity, right? Nothing matters unless you have some sort of clarity to get started. Because here's a big mistake I see college students make all the time, right? They're going 100 miles an hour. Like they're involved in 100 different student organizations. They have an internship, they have a part-time job, they're taking 12 credits. They want to be everything. They're like, I'm going to fill my resume with so much stuff. But here's the thing, like I don't know about you, but I much rather go 1 mile an hour in the right direction than 100 miles an hour in the wrong direction. So before we figure out where we want to intern, where we want to get involved at, I want to challenge you to get clarity. So that's step number one. And what step number one is going to essentially do for you is allow you to create a target list of companies, right? I don't want you to have this shotgun approach of job searching where you're just applying to every company where you meet the minimum qualifications for. I actually want you to reverse that and say, okay, how do I have a sniper approach of job searching and say, what are the top 10, 15 companies max that I can see myself having a fulfilling career with? That if I were to apply for this job and get it, that would accept it on the spot because I'm so excited to be working there, right? And then when we can have clarity on that, then we can move on to step number two, which is visibility, or AKA building a personal brand, right? Because one thing I would tell you is that visibility is actually more important than ability when it comes to landing your dream job, right? There is people who have 4.0s GPAs at 10 top universities who still struggle to get a job. And at the same time, there's people who barely graduated, had right relationships, had the right visibility, and are working at your dream job and your dream company. And so, with that being said, I think building a personal brand tailored towards your target list of companies and being conscious and strategic on how you build the relationships with the hiring managers for the companies that you want to work for is going to gain you the visibility and allow you to get to the interview stage, which is so crucial. And that moves us to step number three, which is about networking, and they work networking to get to the referral. Because studies show that over 85% of all jobs are filled through referral. And it's really human nature. Like if I were to talk to anybody listening to this podcast and I say, hey, let's take a let's make up this scenario, and you're part of a soccer team and the coach says, hey, we need a new forward because our forward got hurt in practice. Now, we can go and put sheets of paper all around the school saying, hey, we're looking for a forward, apply here. We're looking for a new forward. We're looking for someone who's fast. Or we can ask the current players and say, hey, does anybody know a forward that we can bring into the team? And the odds are is that soccer players know soccer players and soccer players hang out with other soccer players and then they're going to know someone. And I don't know about you, but if I was the head coach of that team, I would actually want to hire someone that if my best player said, hey, Daniel, that my friend Arnold, he's very good at soccer, right? I used to play with him in high school. He just transferred to the school. He'll be perfect for their team. I am going to believe that a lot more than if you were to submit your soccer resume and tell me that you were good and fast. And I'm going to be like, well, how fast are you? Because your definition of fast is different than mine. And so that's why networking is so important to get to the referral. Now, a lot of people talk about networking, and networking is super important, but networking does not guarantee you a job. And so that leads us to step number four, and that is the interview. Because what a networking does, or what a referral essentially does, is that it gets you to the interview. And the interview is great because generally you've already eliminated the majority of other candidates. You're kind of like on the top of the list, right? But it's really in the interview that you need to shine and be successful, and that's really really important. And then that then leads to my step, which is step number five, which is at that point the interview then gets you the job, you get the job offer, you celebrate. But I also think it's extremely important, and I think minority students, female students, and first generation students do not do this, is negotiate, right? Even if you get a job offer from your top company, you need to negotiate. And even if that company is very firm on the salary, there's other things you can negotiate. And so that's step number five. So I know that that was a lot, but essentially is clarity, building your personal brand, networking to the referral, acing the interview, and then salary negotiation.
I love that. You hit on right on the spots that I feel like are really important for students. That clarity aspect is so important. Like, what industry are you trying to get into? Because like I've been a recruiter for several companies, and looking at someone that has experience in the industry and that shows the passion for that industry is the easiest way for me to say, hey, this person should get an interview. I love that. I also love your salary negotiation portion, because that is so true, man. People do not negotiate salary, and it sucks because there's so much money left on the table like literally. And I know, like in my case, the first time I negotiated, I was super nervous, but I got more money. So I was like, you know what, I'm always gonna negotiate. And
Yeah.
every single time I negotiated, I ended up getting more money. So it was perfect. And it was something that I read this book, Lean In by Facebook COO, and she talked about how women don't negotiate compared to men. Like they don't negotiate. And give me one second. Why am I naked? I'm not naked. I'm recording a podcast episode. Oh, Milo, why he's naked? Oh, because the collar was making noise when he was walking around. Yeah, I'm recording right now. You just interrupted. All right. So that's what we use editing for.
Yeah.
Okay, so or was I? Oh, salary negotiation. So I reached out to a lot of my female mentees, and it was so true. They all said no, we didn't negotiate, and I was like, why not? But most of them were interns, so that's okay. So I was like, okay, you're gonna negotiate for your full time at least. And then my wife got an offer, and I was like, let's negotiate, and she was like, no. I'm like, yes, no, yes. So we ended up negotiating an internship offer from like $17 to $19. So like throughout the whole summer, that's like 2,000 extra dollars just by asking. So I was like, there you go. I'm gonna have to
Right.
charge
Like,
you for a coaching session.
yeah, we should use that $2,000 and take a vacation when COVID is over. Like that.
I
Like,
like it.
you know what I'm talking about? Like it's crazy. I started last year. I started really doing more recording the data of like the students that I work with,
Mhm.
and on average, we're getting around $3,000 to $5,000 in extra um, compensation for just asking. And I think the biggest fear is like, well, if I ask, I might lose the offer. And I'm like, no, you won't. Like
That's
you're
not how it
too
works.
far into the process. They're not gonna restart and be like, you know what? Arnold was negotiating with me. Nope, we should just go interview. We should restart this whole interview process again and start all over. Like it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, and I hope people negotiate on my side. I'm like, I really hope they negotiate, just because like there's always more to offer. Like especially if you have leverage, you can say like, hey, I have an offer from another company or something like that. We want you. It's like we already did all this process. We want to make sure you go to our company. And trust me, $5,000 more a year for a huge company, well, it's not nothing. It's nothing, nothing. Like they won't even care. So, but for us, it's gonna be something. It's gonna be that extra vacation, like you said,
Absolutely.
Danielle. So, last but not least, work. What type of content do you have out there? Because I know, but I know my listeners might not. Where can we find it, and what are you doing to help students?
Yeah, man, thank you for that question. Anywhere that you're listening to this podcast, you can find my podcast as well. My podcast is tailored towards first generation minority college students and really just focus on giving you advice on how to properly navigate the job search, kind of like following the 5 steps that I spoke about. And if you're looking for more help, just connect with me on LinkedIn. I put out at least a post a day, giving out free content as well. And you can just find me on LinkedIn. Just type Daniel Botero and you're gonna find it.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll have links in the description of this episode of Daniel's podcast, his book, his course, his LinkedIn. I'll just have linked on that to make it everybody easy. Thank you so much, Daniel.
Thank you so much for having me.
It was a pleasure.